wondering how I got into this mix.
20-minute presentations off right now. So put it together for Derrick Broze right now. He's going to kick it off with what is holistic activism. Make some noise, everybody. Gracias.
Somebody left a note up here that says, I love you. So that's nice. I love you guys. So I usually start my talks off in the same way. If you can hear my voice anywhere in Envision, whether you're doing yoga, buying things, eating food, making love, whatever you're doing, if you can hear my voice, please take a deep breath with me. And when we release this breath, can we let out a nice big howl? You know you're going to feel better afterwards. So breathe in. Thank you guys. I've been doing this for about 8 years, being an activist, being just a human being, free human being, trying to change the world for better. And the last couple years have increased my ability to travel the world and speak to people. I was just in Acapulco last week speaking this same message that I'm going to share with you guys. And all over the world, we're getting people to howl, so it's making my dreams come true. It's kind of a personal dream. But my name is Derrick Broze. I know many of you, most of you probably don't know who I am, and I love that. I love speaking to audiences who haven't heard of my work. I'm an independent journalist from Houston, Texas. I'm also the author of 3 books called the Conscious Resistance Trilogy, and another book that my presentation tonight is going to focus on called The Holistic Self-Assessment, which is, like it sounds, about taking an assessment of yourself from a holistic perspective. And we're going to talk about what holistic really means tonight and how that pertains to activism and how I incorporate that in my life and some ideas that maybe you can take home. As you heard, these are short 20-minute presentations. I think I actually have about 30 minutes because we're starting early. I am going to be speaking here again on Saturday morning, 10:15, for an hour-long talk, which I will go much more in detail to these concepts. So I'm based in Houston. I'm an activist, I'm a journalist, and I'm writing books and doing all these things that the universe has called me to do. And I have, in my 8-9 years of activism in Houston, I've worked with a lot of different movements. I've organized a lot of different events, from building community gardens, from organizing protests and rallies and confronting police, and doing sort of confrontational journalism, and really just the whole gamut of activism. First off, before I go any further, who here would consider themselves to be an activist in one form or another? Raise your hand if you consider yourself to be an activist. So we got a few people here. One of the things that I've found in my time as an activist is that many people, when they hear that word, they're thinking of someone on the street holding signs, screaming, rallying, that sort of thing, protest movement, right? But I really believe that activism goes much further than that. For me, activism is my journalism. It's also, if I need to be out in the streets confronting power when that becomes necessary, it's that. But it's also when I'm in the garden with my community and we're planting seeds and we're building new things. It's having a good conversation with somebody. Activism is truly every single act that you make, if you choose it to be. And personally, I'm not a voting man, at least as the political system's concerned. I do vote every single day, though. I vote with my words, with my actions, and with my entire being by living the principles that I want to be about, and that's what today is about. Because, as I said, I've organized quite a bit, and I've worked with a bunch of different movements, and I've seen some of the same, I don't want to call them flaws, I hesitate to call them flaws, but just maybe momentary errors that happen in activism. And I'll give you 2 examples of this that I think are forms of activism that don't take the holistic idea into consideration. And we'll talk about what that word really means, because we're here at Envision, right? I think I've seen workshops on holistic sexuality. Many people know that, holistic medicine, and we're going to talk more about that, what it really means, where that term comes from, and what the philosophy behind it is really about, because I think it's often lost in the, lost in the language or something. But I worked with both the March Against Monsanto in Houston and the End the Fed and the Federal Reserve movements over the years since 2011, 2012. How many people worked with March Against Monsanto, wherever you're from? I mean, it was a global movement. There's people all over the place coming together to, express their concern about bee populations dying off, or the practices of Monsanto and their connection to government forces or pesticides or the environment in general. People were out in the streets, by hundreds. The first March Against Monsanto in 2012, I think we had 400 cities around the world, each with thousands of people coming together, and they held rallies and, gave talks. I participated in a couple different ones. We had a really big one in Houston, and the way that I chose to get involved was to work with our activist community called the Houston Freethinkers and try to organize, well, we did organize after the march, after everybody went up there and held their signs and rallied around, to come back to the community garden. There was this huge farm in some of the poorest parts of Houston called the Last Organic Outpost, and basically saying, okay, we've gone out there, we've marched, we've done these actions, now let's go actually learn how to grow our own food. Now, it probably wouldn't surprise you to know that when the march ended and we went to the garden, we had less than a handful of people there. Out of the several hundred that showed up at the march, maybe half a thousand were there. And I think that's emblematic of the problem here, is that we're looking outwardly, we identify this, the problems that we see, but we don't always ask ourselves, well, how am I contributing to this? And then actually take actionable, tangible steps to get to the goals. Now, again, another example, the End the Fed movement. The End the Fed movement took place at banks all around the country, people focusing on economic inequality and the role of the central bank of the United States. And so they were holding rallies, protests, again, spending a lot of money to organize these events, build stages, fly people from around the country, and go out there and chant. And it feels good when we do that, because you're out there, you're expressing yourself, sometimes you meet new people. I'm not discounting street activism in any way. That's where I was really cut my teeth with activism. But what we saw, though, is all this energy and effort going to spreading awareness and building these rallies, and then people would be celebrating, yeah, End the Fed, and then they go over to go buy a new End the Fed shirt, and they pay with Federal Reserve notes, aka dollars. So they're talking about ending this Federal Reserve system, this economic system, but they're still using the dollar. And again, I think that's emblematic of a problem within activism, is that we can easily identify the problems, and we can say, okay, well, these are the people that I blame, these banks, or these rich, wealthy people, or this institution, or this class, or whatever you want to point at. We can do that all day long, and it's not very difficult. Do a little bit of research, and you start finding places to point your finger at. But how often do we stop and say, well, am I contributing to this in any way? Am I still participating in this system? And if so, how can I start to pull myself out of that and start opting out of these systems? So my talk, again, is what is holistic activism? So I just described two examples of what I would consider to be activism that is not taking the holistic perspective into consideration. So we're going to define holistic. Holistic comes from the philosophy of holism. Holism is about dealing with systems in whole parts rather than breaking them down to individual pieces. And what happens is when you do this, when you take a holistic look at something, it changes the way, the outcome of it. So you have holistic psychology, you have holistic ecology, which is about studying the environment and the human species as one entity rather than breaking them down as separate pieces. Holistic medicine tends to focus on getting at the root of an illness rather than, looking at the whole body rather than just treating the symptom. So to be a holistic activist means to look at the whole system, right? Not just the political system. What is the president up to? What are the senators up to? But look at the economics, and not just what they're doing, but how you're doing. It's the whole idea of people understand the concept of using your purchasing power, right? Voting with your dollar, that kind of thing. You don't really want to go support maybe Walmart, or if you don't like Monsanto, for example, the March Against Monsanto movement, stop buying Roundup. Stop buying products that use pesticides that are connected to that industry. So you see the problem, and then you ask yourself how you're contributing to that, how you're entangled with it, and you take steps to remove yourself from that, to opt out at every turn from systems that do not represent the health and the wealth of our people and us as free, beautiful human beings. So taking a holistic perspective just means that looking at these different areas of your life. As I mentioned, I put out a free book. It came out last week. You can download it for free. I'm not trying to sell you anything. Go to theconsciousresistance.com/books. It's called The Holistic Self-Assessment. It's a very simple 33-page book that asks you first, who am I? Gets you to start self-reflecting and taking these very simple but important questions. The next step we go into is looking at our principles. This is taking a holistic perspective again. So how many people here understand what the concept of a principle is, like what that means? It's okay, so we got some people who understand. Now this is not about saying that anybody's ignorant or anything, because before I started to have this introspection, which for me personally, I had to get addicted to crystal meth and go to prison, and then discover meditation and go through this crazy thing. It's been 13 years now, and I had to do that in order to go into the space. And basically the holistic self-assessment is what I did when I was in prison. This is like, I saw the path. Like, my family has 3 generations of prison and abuse and drug abuse, and I'm like, I can go this way, or I can figure out how the hell I got here. And that's what I started to do, and it's still an ongoing journey. As I said, I got arrested in 2005, so it's been 13 years now. I got into activism about 2010. I got out of prison the final time 2008. So it was a journey to get there, and it still is an ongoing journey. But what I did was to start to look at every area of my life, and I'm still doing this, and look for inconsistency, right? So principles. A principle is supposed to be like your moral compass. It's something that guides you in your every waking action, right? But what I found, and I think if we ask ourselves, we're not really always let alone, you know, aware of what a principle means, or even aware of what guides us. So when you stop and look at your actions and your choices, you're like, wow, I'm all over the place. There's no consistency. I claim that I want to save the environment, but then in my daily actions, I'm being wasteful, or I'm using plastic, or, you know, there's different things like that. I claim that I want a world with compassionate, respectful people, but in my relationships with my significant other, or my mother who drives me crazy, or my family, or my whatever, I'm very rude and impatient and crude. Or maybe with yourself, this was my problem. I was very negative in my self-talk, my personal conversation. I was always telling myself how much I hated myself and how much I did not like who I was. And, you know, I put a lot of blame on myself. It took a lot of time to, you know, untangle that and relearn that conversation. So the point is to establish first who you are, look at yourself, start looking at what your principles are, what guides you. For me, the principles that guide me in my daily life are the golden rule, for one, right, which we've all heard since we were kindergarten, the idea that treat others the way you want to be treated. And it's so simple, but there are some powerful implications with that, you know. And to me, it goes into the second principle that I believe in, which is self-ownership. I believe that each of you are free, beautiful, powerful human beings capable of doing whatever you please, and as long as you don't violate golden rule, which is don't harm me, don't do to me as you don't want me to do to you, then I have no problem how you dress, who you date, what you look like, what you eat. You know, I might think you should maybe make healthier choices, but ultimately, as long as you're not harming me, I have no place to harm you and to get to, you know, initiate force on you. So, golden rule, self-ownership. And third, and what I think is probably most important when taking these together, the seventh generation principle. Taking consideration of the coming 7 generations. I know many of you are familiar with this, and as someone who is learning more and more about my family's indigenous ancestry, I'm part Seminole and then native to what they call Texas in my family, but there's a lot of disjointed records and family loss, and it's very difficult to find out where I come from, you know, but it's a beautiful journey. And so I've taken these lessons and incorporated them into my activism, and as I said, the golden rule, self-ownership. You're beautiful people, you own yourself, and that means so is everybody else. So you have no right to tell other people how to live their lives as long as they're not violating that golden rule against you. And then when you incorporate the 7th generation principle, we've got a room full of beautiful, powerful, capable people respecting each other, being compassionate towards themselves and other people, and thinking about the future, not just what's happening right now. And that's what we need, I believe. Those are some starting principles, you know. With this self-assessment, as you take yourself through it, you might identify other things that are important to you. But I think if we could start with those foundational principles, we'd be in a hell of a lot better place than we're seeing ourselves currently. So then, how much time, where am I at on time? Anybody? Killing it. All right, we keep going. All right, so from principles, you move to habits. And this is where the important work happens, because you actually start to see these inconsistencies. You've established who you are. Okay, I'm Derrick Broze, I'm a journalist, you know, I've got these flaws. I used to be a liar, a cheater, I've stolen from people, I was a drug addict, and now I'm much better. I'm working, I'm striving to be a better person every day. And then I establish my principles, right? Then I start looking at my habits. And what are your habits? Your habits are, well, hold on, I'm skipping one. Goals. Goals first. Your goals are important because what is a goal? A goal is an object you want to possess, an experience you want to have. It's something that you want to bring towards your being, right? Whatever that may be. So you've established who you are, you've established your principles, now you're looking at your goals. Again, I want to create a sustainable community. I want to save the environment. I want to get rid of Donald Trump, or whatever, you know, whatever your goals may be. They could also be, I want to lose some weight so I feel good at the beach this summer. They could be big to very mundane and simple, right? But you establish your principles, establish your goals. Then you get to habits. And this is, like I said, this is where the good stuff happens, the fun work, because you look at your goals and you say, well, I want to lose 10 pounds and get that beach body I've always wanted by the summer. And then you look at your habits, and your habits are sleep till 3 p.m. every day and eat pizza all day long, play video games and get high. Well, there's an obvious disconnect right there. As you guys can see, you're never going to get that goal, right? So now let's think about the bigger picture. As activists, as free human beings, we say we want to change the world, we want to end economic inequality, or we want to save the environment, do all these different important goals that have good intention behind them. And then we look at our personal habits, and how many times do those personal habits actually align with our stated goals? I haven't seen very much. I know there's a lot of beautiful people working hard, and I do what I can, and I'm not standing here claiming to be in line perfect at all. We're all on a journey together. These are just a few ideas I've picked up along the way that I've found helpful. So you get to know yourself and understand what principles guide you and what that even means to you. And then look at your goals and make some, 1 month short-term goals, 6 months, a year, 5 years. Really think about tangibly, practically about where you want to go, what you want to create. We're here at Envision Festival. There's so much potential here. I spoke at another conference last week in Acapulco with an equal amount of people here. Very excited, life-changing conversations, beautiful talks and music. But what really matters is what we do once we leave here. You know, whether you're from the States, whether you're local here, wherever we're going, what really matters is what we do with this creation that we've made here, and that Stephen Brooks and Sarah and all these beautiful people have come together to make. Give a hand for everybody who's putting Envision together. This is such a beautiful thing to be here, and I'm so honored to be here that they've invited me to share this message, because I think that this is exactly where I need to be, and I think you're exactly where you need to be. We're talking to each other for a reason, and I hope that we'll come up and we'll continue this conversation once I'm off the stage. My point, though, is if we just go back to our regular lives, whatever that means, whatever regular is to you, whether that's a day job or just being a nomad, if we just go back to that and nothing changes after this, it's on us. We have nobody else to blame but us. You know, we have the ability to become aware of the world, become aware of the problems, and then think holistically and say, am I contributing to that? Am I contributing to more negativity in the world? Am I contributing to the destruction of the environment? And am I contributing to privilege or economic inequality, or, you know, there's a growing surveillance state in the United States that really scares the crap out of me? How much of us are acquiescing and accepting these things and not, you know, removing ourselves from them? Now, I'm gonna mention a couple other areas. I'm gonna kind of breeze through this. I mentioned principles, goals, and habits. That's where you can see the inconsistencies. The most important area I think we get to is relationships, because as I mentioned earlier, you know, I don't really care who you are. I've met a lot of different activists, a lot of different people who do this full time, and there are celebrity activists out there who can talk a big game, but if in their personal relationships they're assholes, then who's gonna wanna work with them? I mean, and that's just the truth of it. You know, we have to align ourselves, not just speak a good game and understand the philosophy and the politics and all that and economics. That's great if you got that, but if you're not good inside with yourself, then that's going to shine through in one way or another, and it's going to be difficult, I believe, to work with people. So the goal then should be to align our goals, our principles, our habits, and our relationships with the stated goals. You want to change the world, you want to create Envision every single day, rainbow every day, all these beautiful experiences, then live it. When you leave these gates, don't change, don't go back to, you know, looking away from people, turning them down, being rude. Look them in the eyes, have a conversation, tell them that you recognize that they have value and that they have light inside of them, and that they can change the world. And I'll tell you what, people will respond to that. And each of us going out there and doing that, and in believing it about ourselves as well, that's where it really starts. If we do this, we're going to see these changes, and they will transfer over to the tangible, physical steps that we need to take place. Because I'm not trying to ignore that we do need a lot of infrastructure changes in the world in order to achieve this, you know. But if we're only looking externally and outwardly, and not looking at how we can help this, and you know, it's cliche, but the whole being the change thing it's cliche for a reason, because it's true, and that's what holistic activism is truly about, looking at those things. Now, I mentioned earlier opting out of systems that don't serve us as free, beautiful, powerful individuals. Last year I did a 48-city, 9-week tour of the United States spreading this message. It was called the Decentralize Your Life Tour. My partner Miriam, who's right there filming, she would start things with a guided meditation, and then we would share the message of holistic activism and what I call freedom cells, which we'll be talking about here on Saturday. And when I say decentralizing, what I mean is, again, aligning your life, your physical life, your body, your mind, your heart with your values and your principles. So for me, this means unplugging from the centralized education system in the United States. I mean, we live in a beautiful age because of the internet and the decentralized nature of it, at least still in the United States, until they try to control that. We have options. You can educate yourself for free right now. Who's heard of edx.org? Anybody here? If not, take this down if you want to educate yourself without paying and going into debt. edx.org are free college classes taught by university professors across the United States. I've taken journalism classes, astronomy, physics, all kinds of things. You can pay a little extra if you want some sort of certification, but there's many others out there. My point is that we have options. We have decentralized options that we can take our education in our own hands. We don't have to rely on the mainstream, or as we like to refer to them as the dead stream media, because that's what they do, is they spew this dead, dying, like, ignorance. We want to create something new, so that means stop supporting, stop paying attention to them. Support independent alternative media. I write for several websites that some of you may have heard, or their big Facebook pages, The Mind Unleashed, The Anti-Media, and my page is The Conscious Resistance. And we are teams of people just like you, spreading information and learning to be journalists to compete with these systems and trying to provide an alternative. And speaking of social media, Facebook, YouTube, Google, all these things are centralized systems. These people work closely to share your information, not with just government whenever the government comes a-calling, but with corporations that sell your information to place ads in front of you while they're making money, you know, all the while. As a journalist and as a content creator, I've been using Facebook and these platforms for 8 to 9 years and getting nothing from my efforts other than spreading awareness, which is what the ultimate goal is. But now there are decentralized platforms. One of them that is very important, I want you guys to check this out, Steemit, STEEMIT.com. If you've not heard of this, there's too much in this short conversation to explain it, but it's a beautiful, decentralized, censorship-free platform for blogging, for posting. You know, they have now, based on the Steemit concept, they've built others, DSound, which is an alternative, decentralized, reward-based alternative to SoundCloud, DTube, decentralized YouTube, DLive, decentralized live streaming, Steepshot, a reward-based decentralized Instagram. So you can use alternatives without feeding these big corporations not only your information, but your time, your energy, and allowing them to get richer while they do not serve our interests. So my point is, again, there are options for us to look about the situation in a holistic manner and to decentralize, to unplug, and to localize. We can get into education, economy. I mentioned trying to unplug from the Federal Reserve System. I try not to use the dollar as much as possible. As a journalist, I've been getting paid in cryptocurrency for the last 5 years, Bitcoin and many others, and also I barter. I try to focus on building localized currencies in other places. When we traveled and did the tour, we were up in Northern California in Humboldt County, and they had the Humboldt bucks. They created their own alternative local currency that everybody around town accepted. And, you know, my point is, we can find ways to opt out of these systems instead of just acquiescing and doing what's easy. And it is difficult to do these things. It's difficult to break away. It's very easy to just stay comfortable. I don't want to be comfortable. I've never wanted to be comfortable. I've never liked being comfortable. Comfortable, for me, it leads to, you know, being complacent, and it leads to being, I don't know, not what I want to be. I want to be alive. I want to be breathing every day and being a free, beautiful, powerful human being, changing the world by changing myself and encouraging other people to change themselves. And that's what I'm trying to do. That's what my life is committed to. I do this full time because nothing else matters. I just recently turned 33, and Steven invited me out to Punta Mora for my birthday, and that's how I ended up here. And I say to you, my brothers and sisters, all my relatives, that if each of us really incorporate these ideas, I don't think I'm on to anything special. I think these ideas have been around for some time. I'm just putting them in a different manner, maybe trying to bring them into the digital age. If we incorporate these ideas, we start thinking holistically about our lives and our activism, I think we can really see the changes that we want to take place. Where am I on time? I think I'm supposed to go to 6:50. Anybody? Anybody? I got one more thing I want to mention. 3 minutes? Cool. Okay, so the last thing I want to say, besides the fact that I love you guys, and it's really cool that there's a sticky note here that says I love you, I am an anarchist. I'm an anarchist. I'm coming out of the closet as an anarchist. My talk wasn't titled What is Holistic Anarchism, but I'm an anarchist. What that means to me, for one, that word, that political philosophy, has a negative rap. What it means is right now you guys are existing in anarchy right now. It means not no rules, but no rulers, no masters, no slaves. That we are, again, each free, beautiful people that are we own ourselves. We own our abilities to be free and to live and to coexist. Right now, none of you are killing each other, being violent against each other. Nobody's telling you to do that. You are existing in a state of anarchy right now. This is freedom. This is people coming together voluntarily, choosing to interact without force. And for me, when I look at the situation and I ask myself what is force, what is violence, I see that the government is force. I see that corporations are force and that they are violence and they're destructive to Mother Earth and they're destructive to my brothers and sisters and they're destructive to our very spirit. So that calls me to be an anarchist because, for one, as I said, I believe that you each own yourself and that I have no right to tell you how to live your lives. And I think if we can recognize that, we recognize the beauty of self-ownership. I don't need you to call yourself about, some might say it's about smashing windows, it's about violence. It's not about that. It's about peace, it's about love, it's about freedom. And that's what I want you guys to understand. That's my real message. I had to save that to the end, just in case anybody's freaked out by the word anarchism. But I'm a holistic anarchist. Nice to meet you. My last thing, I have a positive affirmation. This is the way I always end. If you guys would join me in this, very, very much thank you for your time. As I said, I'll be here tomorrow for a panel and Saturday for a longer talk. Come talk to me. Let's exchange info. Repeat after me if you feel inclined. I am powerful.
I am powerful.
I am beautiful.
I am beautiful.
I am free.
I am free.
Thank you, guys.